everybody, I am back with another reaction video, and this time we are reacting to 1-star reviews of Before They Are Hanged. Again, I picked another friend to select 10 reviews on Goodreads, and I haven't read them, and I'm going to react to them. And we are doing Before They Are Hanged this time because Before They Are Hanged is my favourite book by Joe Abercrombie, and to me it's a flawless book, so I'm really curious to see what people have written. All right, let's get started. Some of these are quite long, so I might just pick parts rather than read the whole thing. So yeah, let's get started. I guess my clearest opinion on this book is that I have opinion of it, or at least not any what's worth another thought. I know the book is beloved in certain circles, but reading the whole thing felt like a chore to me. I do agree that some of the characters are very likeable. They grew on me. I take all of that back. I didn't care one bit for most of what happened in Before They Are Hanged, with the exception of that one scene with Colin West and the Crown Prince. I cannot imagine reading 4 more books of this. I cut out the middle bit because it's quite a long paragraph. I can understand why people don't connect with the characters in this series, because a lot of them are very unlikable. And I think for a lot of people, they like having your typical hero and going through the hero's journey. None of these people are particularly heroic. They do sometimes do heroic acts, but they are not heroes in themselves. While it hurts me, I can understand. Like I can see why. All right. A major disappointment. While the first installment was everything one could wish for, this one is just a series of tedious battles strung together. That's really interesting because most people hate the first one and they love the second one. So they are the inverse of that, which I haven't heard from anybody, to be honest. And also, I don't remember there being that many battles in Before They Are Hanged. I think there's like 2 big battles, and then there's like some smaller ones where other stuff is happening, but I could be wrong. Next one. Forced my way through the first book on a recommendation. Found myself torn between hating it for a lot of trite shit and a lack of depth, and on finding it relatively exciting as it stirred up boyhood nostalgia for commercial genre fiction. Found none of the excitement in this one, and only found notable development in a single character, and even that was nonsensical. West. The furious nickname made me want to puke, by the way, not to mention the pathetically written sex scenes. Reminds me of the Warded Man series in the worst way. Finished with this series, life's too short for, oh, you know the adage. Guess I'll go read The Lord of the Rings again. This kind of actually furthers my point. Lord of the Rings is so different to First Law, like you just cannot compare them. It's like trying to compare apples and oranges. They are trying to achieve very different things. Lord of the Rings is the classic like hero story, good versus evil. In First Law, you don't know who's evil and you don't know who's good, and everybody's somewhere in between. So yeah, I don't think it has a lack of depth. I think that's a stretch. But yeah, I mean, it seems like this person maybe just doesn't really like the morally grey aspect of it, given that they mentioned Lord of the Rings. So yeah. Next, we have this one. I really hated this book. I didn't like the character development, unnecessarily provocative material, plot, or really anything about it. I decided to start the 3rd book, but quickly gave up and read a plot summary to see the ending. And man, I'm glad I didn't push through to get to that ending. You might be thinking, that's harsh, you should be more generous. 1 star, really? Yes, really. It's my own rating system and I wouldn't recommend these books to a single person. Don't read it. It isn't worth your time. Fair? I mean, again, I don't want to like criticize people's opinions because your opinion is valid, but I thought the ending of the 3rd book was amazing and I didn't see it coming. I said this before, I'm not typically somebody who like predicts endings, but I'm generally quite good. I like knowing where a book is going, but I didn't see that twist at the end, specifically the Jezal Baez twist at Last Argument of Kings. And I thought the battle scenes were really well written in the last book, but yeah, it makes me sad that people didn't like the character development because I think Abercrombie is such a master at writing characters, but again, it is what it is. All right, we've got 3 left. It's quite long, this one. So yeah, bear with me. This is not actually a bad book. Abercrombie is a good writer and I had no problem finishing the book and I actually enjoyed the ending here. Agreed. The problem with this is that it is a completely unnecessary book. I suspect one could completely remove this entire volume from the First Law trilogy without losing anything meaningful. I disagree with this because there's so much character development that happens in this book that we needed Before They Are Hanged for that. I'm going to continue on. And that is a big problem because this is a long book where, huge spoiler, Half of the storyline, the quest, is completely pointless. I didn't mind that part. Actually, it's the part of the story that I like. But usually when you have a long journey in fiction, pointless or not, the characters change. They come away having learned something and grown. The characters here seem to have done so, but you eventually realise, especially in the third book, they actually haven't. They travel to the end of the world and are just as dumb evil at the end of their journey as when they started out. See, this I completely disagree with. I don't know what book they read after, but that's just objectively wrong, in my opinion. All right, next paragraph. The world building and characters in the first book were the highlight in a way, and you learn a little bit more about them in this book, but not very much. This is the book where you begin to realise that Abercrombie's central thesis is that nothing changes. They may seem to, sure, but they don't. The same character details are repeated ad nauseum. The characters are still deep and complex, but they start feeling like living ones. Hard to explain why this was bad without going into spoiler territory, so I'll save that for the review of the final book. He's right. I agree with him that, yeah, he's caught on that the whole idea of like nothing really changes. But I don't entirely agree with it, because I think if you look at a character like Jezzel, he is fundamentally different at the end of this book, and we really see that come through in the third book. And I think Logan changes quite a lot as well. Yeah. All right, next one. This is the penultimate one. This book is undoubtedly the worst book I have ever read. I have read many bad books that made my blood boil, but nothing so far has been as bad as this book right here. At the start of it, I was very excited because I was really enjoying it. Then as I got a good chunk of the way in, I realised that most of what had happened so far didn't really matter. There is no real goal, and then from there on, it's all just downhill. I did not DNF at this point because I thought one of the characters was interesting, but that too started to get stale and then just downright bad. There is a very cringy sex scene that leads to the most uninspired, awkward sexual tension and drama. The whole book is rather pointless, and if you skip the entire thing, you actually wouldn't really miss anything because there is no plot to miss. I can't stress enough how bad this book is, and if I could get the time back, I absolutely would. Yeah, I mean, I straight up disagree. Again, entitled to their opinion, but I think this is a really critical book in terms of character development and getting a sense of how these individuals have changed in some ways, but also haven't in other ways. I lied as well, by the way. I have two more. This is a short one, though. Let something happen already. Typical trilogy bullshit. Well, gotta finish the third one now. I don't recommend unless you have 30 hours of reading to waste. That's strong. I mean, if you're calling it typical trilogy bullshit, why are you going to read the third book? Like, make it make sense, mate. Like, seriously. All right, last one. This is a chunky one as well, so I'll try and read it fairly quickly. If I'd read only the first book, I would have given it a higher rating, but when you consider the entire series, you realise it's ultimately a road to nowhere. While the first book is enjoyable, by the second, an astute reader starts to realise that none of the characters have agency. Their actions become increasingly irrelevant. By the final book, it's clear that they were little more than puppets, not of the story's villain, but of an author who drags us through mounting tedium. The action scenes are fairly well done, but ultimately the same thing over and over again. Even the characters' catchphrases become annoyingly monotonous. Say one thing for the first Lord trilogy, say it's repetitive. I'll just pause there for a second. I don't agree, but okay. Spoilers. But perhaps the greatest failing of the series is that none of the characters grow over the hundreds of pages. Jezzel starts the book as an immature coward and ends as one. Logan begins the series as a serial killer who's supposed to be empathetic because he's, the Hulk when he's angry. And that's exactly where he ends. Ferro begins the series as a self-absorbed assassin, and by the end, you get the point. Glocta, they actually spelled it Glotka, is the only character with even a modicum of complexity, and his evolution is superficial at best. Sure, they move from place to place, a puppeteer to become powerless kings and such, but they take no real journey, and neither does the reader. Again, I don't agree with that. Like, I think some of the things he says I agree with, but I do think there is a point to it. And I think to say that Glotka is the only character with a modicum of complexity is just, in my opinion, wrong. Like, I think Jezzel is probably one of the most complex characters, and I think Logan is also very complex in his own ways. I think the whole circularity of the series of, like, they kind of end up where they started, I don't fully agree with. I do agree with it in certain aspects, but I don't fully agree with it as well, because I do think the characters grow quite a lot, and I think we get that a lot in the final book. So yeah, I mean, I think this definitely hurt my soul a little bit, but at the same time, like, I really do understand that this series is just not for everybody. Oh, I just realised I've got two more left. Sorry. They're really short though. So one says repetitive, boring, and absolutely pointless. Okay. Then this other person says, see the review for Blade itself. More of the same precocious child who's told not to swear, awful sexual violence that passes as grit, and the single most embarrassing page in any book I've ever read. Hint, it's a sex scene that takes place in dialogue with multiple lines of and ah. Yeah, I mean, I think the awkwardness of those scenes is meant to be funny. Again, I don't think they are for everyone. I don't think this series is for everybody, and that's okay. I do, like I said, I think the circularity argument is quite an interesting one and is probably the most convincing argument to use. But again, I don't fully agree with it. So yeah, how did you find those reactions, people? Do you agree with any of them? Because I think there's some that I can definitely get behind, but I think the characters don't develop is just an argument that I just don't agree with at all. And yeah, that's it. I think I will definitely do more of these videos because they're quite funny and they're a nice change from doing my normal reviews. So if there's any books, as I said in my Three Musketeers one as well, like let me know and I'd be happy to do that. Hope you enjoyed it. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and I'll see you in the comments. Thanks for watching, folks. Stay safe and I'll see you soon. Bye.